Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Stephen Halpern. And Stephen, you and I met back in the 1980s in Moscow, and wow, what an amazing trip we've both had since then and before then. And I would like to have you start by introducing yourself and telling us about the work you do or the play you do, and then we'll go back and look at the earlier beginnings of how you came into this.
All right. Well, great. I am Stephen Halpern. I've been a composer, producer, recording artist out in the public for the last 47 years now.
Wow.
And I came into this work from a lifetime and many lifetimes of working with the healing powers of music. Some of my breakthrough discoveries have been very much assisted by some of the leading scientists in the field of quantum biology, people like Dr. Stanley Krippner, who turned me on to the importance of getting objective scientific biofeedback data to prove that the music that I was channeling, that I was composing and producing, created a different field effect, a different response in people's brains and bodies and auras and energy fields than most music. Back in 1969, when this music first started coming to me, there was nothing like it out in the world, and certainly nothing that you could go into a store to buy or now online to listen to. Although the healing powers of music go back 5,000 years, where cultures have recognized and honored and revered the healing powers of music. My early search was to know what healing music would sound like in the late 20th century. And when that started coming through, I shared it with other people, and everybody said, we'd like a tape of that. We'd like an LP of that. And without knowing anything about business, being trained as a musician and artist, I started my own little record company in 1975 and learned a lot of things by trial and error, worked with some people, got ripped off by some major labels, but mostly I've always been an independent artist-run label, putting out music because the initial response and the ongoing response has been that this is music that creates a positive morphic resonance out in the world. In other words, when people listen to this music, their brains shift into a higher coherence mode of functioning, which is good, which is a good thing. Both hemispheres get balanced. And being a type A individual from New York, now we might call it being a high-functioning ADHD adult individual, I like things that work quickly, easily. Back in 30 years ago, so when MTV was coming along, people said, I want my MTV and I want it now. I want my relaxation and I want it now. I tried classical music. I tried rock music. I was a professional jazz musician. That was great music, but it didn't get me to a state of balance and healing. And what I learned from reading the research of Dr. Herbert Benson on the importance of the relaxation response and working directly with mentors like the genius Itzhak Bentov and other world-class scientists, is that there was a whole host of responses that happen in the body where the body's self-healing, innate healing energies are empowered when you get the individual into a state of higher hemispheric balance and deep relaxation, so that I don't have to do anything. Everybody's body, mind, and spirit as an energetic field knows how to shift into a higher order of functioning if you give it the right raw materials. My music has done that. And in order to do that, I had to learn about business. I had to learn about marketing. I had to learn how to communicate this to the press, to get some press, because people said, where's the beat? Where's the words? You know, this isn't music. all sorts of things like that, fighting my way through graduate school. People say, well, you violate all the rules of classical composition. And I said, that's right. And because of that, my music is more relaxing than any of Mozart, any of Bach and Beethoven, because they were not composing music for relaxation. Mozart was a classic ADHD person. He was working on music for his, himself and the commissions. But in, 18th century Vienna, if you put people to sleep in the coffee capital of the world, Vienna at that time, the caffeine capital, if you put the prince or the emperor asleep, you lost your gig. So this is something that's been very clearly a 20th century, now a 21st century focus. And when I started, people didn't get it at all. And now everyone from the major labels to all the people who copy on internet and online with their own versions of mindful music or relaxation music, or as we'll talk about, brainwave entrainment, a lot of them still don't know what they're doing, but you're allowed to say whatever you want because there are no police for the truth in advertising police. So there's a lot of crap out there in the world, but there's a lot of good stuff. A lot of musicians have come along and are doing really good music now. And there's a lot of stuff, and I won't go into names right now, that is actually, for my body, is dangerous. And some of these are Grammy-winning albums in the pop field and the rap field, but I work with the positive energies, and that's what I've been doing out in the world, and writing articles and speaking at conferences and doing online conferences like this to share that information of how great and wonderful a gift healing music is, but you got to use the right music, and you need to be open to receive that blessing.
So, Stephen, obviously, when people have this brain coherence that you speak about, this puts them in a more peaceful state. And what I'm hearing you say is that by creating this inner peace, this will help us with creating peace out in the world. Absolutely.
And that was part of my very first marketing pieces. My headliners weren't necessarily as good as they should have been, but the body of the first articles I was writing and the first things that psychics told me, and in fact, one of the scientists who I worked with in my graduate research with Kirlian photography and brainwave biofeedback, when we saw the results, he said, this is no longer just your graduate research project. This information needs to be taken out into the world. This is no longer a research project. This is your life. That was Randall Fonts, who is one of the people who was working with Marcel Vogel, featured in The Secret Life of Plants. And that was one of those days that, when someone says that to you, this is your life, and you have no money, no business skills, and a whole lot of other things, and you're barely getting by making the rent every month as a musician, you go, how am I supposed to do that? How is that supposed to happen? And as I'm writing my memoir over the last couple of years, connecting the dots, it's been a fascinating perspective that I never really had, as how many articles I've written, how many conferences I've spoken at, and putting out this word years before anyone else was even talking about the healing powers of music, and then building that in terms of the holistic, complementary, and alternative medical field. So I was a charter member of the American Holistic Medical Association, which Dr. Norm Shealy started. I've worked with and done concerts with Andrew Weil and been on programs with Deepak Chopra. The only musician who was honored to be on those stages giving information, as well as demonstrating and bringing people into the experience through the music.
So, Stephen, let's go back and look at your early life. What kind of family did you grow up in? You said you grew up in New York City.
I grew up outside of New York City.
Okay.
We were actually in the town called Flushing, which in the West Coast, nobody believed the city was called Flushing. Who names the city after a toilet? But we moved to Long Island, a place called Valley Stream. And my family was, there was no music played in the house. Let me start there.
What did your parents do?
My father was basically a textile salesman until that company went out of business, and then he drove a cab for the last 7 years or so before he was retired. And because of that, I didn't go to the college that I thought I was going to go to, University of Michigan. I went to my safe school, University of Buffalo, which wound up being the absolute perfect place for me. My mother was a take charge person. When I had my first gig at age 13, playing her office Christmas party in a mutual funds office, she was the secretary that ran everything. She then worked at PS 95, I guess in Queens, and she ran everything. She was like the person who ran the office in the school. So that's what they did.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had one brother 4 years younger, wasn't very close with him. And then as soon as I could, for a lot of other reasons, I got away from that environment. High school was not a particularly wonderful place for me, but it did give me my start when I was able to get kicked out of concert band and marching band, particularly where as a trumpet player, you had to march around, which is terrible for the embouchure. Got hit by a trombone one time, and a freezing, playing trumpet in a freezing football game. Not my idea of a good time. So I got kicked out, started the jazz band in the high school talent troupe, and that gave me my first opening to sharing music, but it was jazz. It was great, but it was getting me on stage, helping me come out of my more introverted shell. But what really started happening in college right away in the first month, because I was playing trumpet, I could carry it around with me. There was a jam session going on in the faculty lounge in the first month of college with some great jazz musicians, one of whom was kind of the guru of Buffalo, Jack Clark, with some other great jazz musicians. And I'm sitting on the floor with my trumpet case next to me. And Jack sees me and says, "Is that a trumpet?" I go, "Yeah." He says, "Get on up here." So I'm pulled out of the office. I sit in with them. And this is the reason I mentioned that. I start playing some of the fancy scales and riffs that I knew to impress people, because that's what a lot of jazz was about, very more intellectual and ego-based. And suddenly I shifted into another spectrum of energy. The trumpet played itself, and it was effortless. I didn't know what happened, but afterwards people said, "When did you get so good? How did you learn how to do that?" And I realized I had clicked into playing on automatic, where I had made connection with my muse, and I was now being able to be a conduit for the music to play through me, not just from me. And that, over the next several years, was my focus in being a great jazz musician, but that also gave my nervous system and my musicality an experience. So when I had been praying and reading about healing music throughout the world and different cultures, and I was going to be studying ethnomusicology and cross-cultural manifestations of healing music and higher consciousness, which you could do in academia, I had an experience, much to my surprise, and a spontaneous meditation in a redwood forest in California when I was visiting for what I thought was 2 weeks, that opened me up to start playing the music on piano, on keyboards. Much easier than playing it on trumpet. Trumpet is not a great meditation instrument. And that opened me up to being invited to be on staff at this, one of the first major human potential retreat centers, which brought me in touch with Dr. Stanley Krippner, Dr. John Lilly, and so many other leaders, including the leading psychic, Ann Armstrong of that day, who said, "Your music is going to change the world." And I had no idea what she was talking about. So that was my entree from music to opening up
So which retreat center?
It was called Bridge Mountain Foundation. It was like a smaller sister of Esalen Foundation.
Okay. Yeah.
We were about 79 miles away from there. And a lot of the teachers would teach at Esalen, come to us, and they'd come to us and then go to Esalen. And my job was on staff was cleaning, cooking, being ready to, serve the people who come every weekend. But it gave me at least 4 hours a day to sit at the old upright piano that they had in the workshop room and just get into a meditative state and let my fingers begin to play. And that's how I learned to play this new music. It taught me.
So you didn't take standard piano lessons.
No.
You basically taught yourself or let the muse work through you.
Exactly.
Wow, how interesting.
Now, I knew music and I knew simple things on piano because I was playing guitar as well. So I knew, simple chords, and I knew simple blues and rock enough that when I was trying out instruments at Sam Ash in 1978, I was playing some of my jazz rock funky stuff, and 2 bands came by and said, "Wow, that's it. Could you join our band?" And I said, "No, I live in California, so I'm just testing this out." But I was good enough on simple things, but all this new music was all things that just came to me. And then after a while, I was able to do it consciously and not just in trance. So that was the difference. And then when I had my first opportunity to record in the recording studio, I discovered my temple of sound. That has been my most healing environment. It's a place where I could go deeply into state and have a literal record of it. We can record the music, and then over the years, and this is one of the things that I get into in my memoir, is a lot of my breakthroughs have actually happened in the recording studio, and I could point to exactly the point in a recording where I shifted state. My engineer knew when that happens, put on a fresh reel of tape back in the 70s, and let's just keep recording until the vibe, is finished. And that's where my album CHAKRA SUITE started. That's where my album Eastern Peace started. That's where my album Higher Ground started. That I don't even remember playing some of the music that is on those records. But as soon as I heard it, I knew it.
So this is wonderful. Can you kind of describe what that state is like, or is it sort of, yeah, great.
Okay. Now we have the vocabulary to talk about mindfulness. It's a state of being totally in the moment. So I don't know what's going to come. I can't remember what I played 10 seconds ago, which was very frustrating in days when if my fingers hit a wrong note and I need to punch in, I had to do the whole thing over because there was no structure in the usual sense. But I get into a place where my hearing becomes very highly attuned, where I can hear into the spaces between the notes. And as I'm listening to the harmonics and the overtones and the blendings, as I work with the sustain pedal and some of the ways I manipulate sound of the instruments, I will hear the next phrase. And then I won't know what I'm going to do until I hear the next phrase, and then get into some places. And sometimes phrases come up fully formed. Sometimes I'll need to come back afterwards and do some overdubbing. And sometimes I will hear more than I'm able to play in the moment, but I could come back and overdub that. In the years since, I will often edit and listen to what a project that I'm working on in the studio, and I listen as I'm going to sleep. And I will get edits in dream that I will remember, or it'll wake me up. I'll make a note, or once I hear something, I could remember it. And then the next time I'm in the studio, I just have to play it. And it's all without writing down stuff. I just go into that place of totally being connected to the quantum field. Deepak Chopra talks about the place of pure potential, the gap between thoughts. I am in the gap between thoughts. I don't see visions in most cases, but I am in that place where the potential is universal.
A question for you. Do you find that it really helps you being out in nature?
Absolutely. Always has. Always has. And indeed, as I mentioned, my breakthrough, the initiation for this new music came in a redwood meditation area. It was like redwoods grow, particularly this one, in circles. They cleared out the middle. It turned out to be a sacred meeting place for the Native Americans. New Age groups owned that property when I first found it. And it was a highly charged place. Several years later, another great pioneer of New Age music, Joel Andrews, the harpist, had his initiation in the same place, which we found out about when he wrote his book before I did. And I said, wow, we both were initiated in the same place. So there was something really good going on in that place.
Lovely. Wow. So do you have any suggestions or advice to people out there about finding and fulfilling your life's purpose? Because clearly you found and are fulfilling your life's purpose in sharing this amazing music with the world. What advice do you have for others?
Okay, well, several. One, set the intention that that's what you want to happen. You could write an affirmation on yourself. And if you're writing it yourself, you will speak in the first person. And the research says it's also good to write this down, but being an audio guy, I have always recorded these as well. You put Post-its on your mirrors in the bathroom in various places. I tune in, I discover my purpose in the world. I understand, I open up to my divine mission. I would also recommend power charging that on power assisting those affirmations and those intentions with a soundtrack that gets you into the deep alpha and the deep theta brain state, because that's where your subconscious mind is most powerfully aligned with your intention. My album, in fact, the most recent video that I just posted is from the album Deep Theta, track 13. That's the most ambient track on it. And I will often just play that track on endless loop when I'm meditating or when I'm working on a creative project. But when I want to meditate, as I mentioned, a type A person, I want to get in and out sometimes in 5 minutes. When I read all the books, I've read all the books that say you need to meditate 20 minutes twice a day. And I'm like a lot of those people that say, I don't have 20 minutes twice a day. What do you have that'll get me there in 5 minutes? And then for the really type A people, and I used to be one of them, it was like, what do you have? I come from New York. What do you have that'll get me there in a minute? And when I first went to the field of music therapy, they said there's no music that could possibly get you into a balanced state in 1 minute. You have to listen to this whole symphony for an hour. And I said, I don't have that much of time. Let me show you my research. I could change brains. I could change your electromagnetic energy field, your aura, your biofield within seconds. And some of them loved that. And for many of them, this was a threat because their whole lifetime had been classical music is the highest, most evolved form of Western music. Well, in the left brain aspect, yes. But when it comes to healing and meditation and tuning into your life purpose, you want to bring a whole brain into this, not just your left hemisphere, not just a half brain. So that's one of the things. So setting intention, I work both with audio affirmations and subliminal affirmations. I have a whole series of subliminal affirmation albums that combine my music that gets you into the proper brain state for most effective receptivity, but you don't actually hear the words. And the advantage with that is your conscious mind whether you're working on health or weight loss or whatever, if you say, I am relaxed, and you're not relaxed, your conscious mind will go, you're not relaxed, you can't relax. So there's a direct blockage.
Yeah.
So if it's subliminal, the intellectual, critical mind doesn't get involved. The subconscious responds to subliminal affirmations in the same way that we may see peripheral vision. It comes into your consciousness without your conscious awareness. This is done all the time by advertisers, by movies and TV shows. But unless you've been trained to perceive subliminal perception, subliminal visuals, subliminal affirmations and auditory, you may not recognize this. I've developed my sensitivity also in print. There's a lot of subliminal advertising going on in print. Through my graduate research, I was connected with Dr. Wilson Bryan Key, who wrote the great book, Subliminal Seduction. And I understood why I had clipped out certain liquor ads from magazines that I was strangely attracted to. And I said, I don't drink. Why am I staring at this? Well, it turned out that there were some very sexual images buried in the ice cubes, buried in, in various aspects of the artwork. And once I saw that, it was like the skies opened up, and I saw how much and how we are being manipulated all the time. When you work with your own affirmations, it's not manipulation. You're choosing what to feed your subconscious mind. So that is what I would say. You want to self-orchestrate on the spectrum of consciousness, which is a quote that I got from Jean Houston in 1977 when I first met her. And as soon as I heard her say that, lights went on in my head. That's what we're doing. We're taking control for ourselves. And I like being in control of my own mind. I don't like someone else telling me subliminally or otherwise how I'm supposed to feel, what I should feel. I want to tune into my own highest and best purpose.
So here's a question for you. Is it possible that people can create their own subliminal affirmations that are the ones that they know that they want to give themselves and somehow combine that with your music?
Oh, absolutely. I've been teaching that in my workshop since 1975. It's much easier now. You can simply call yourself on your cell phone, have my music playing in the background, or you could try other music and speak even if it's just a 1-minute message, play it up, because this happens quickly. Again, coming from my background, I don't need 20 minutes to get that hit of intentional support and manifesting intention. It's part of the secret, but it's the audio part of the secret. So if you have a recording device and you want to go longer, you could do that. You could do it on a video. If you're working on a Zoom, you could record yourself and speak these affirmations. And it could be as simple as that. And then you say, well, I need a new affirmation. So you do it. When I do my albums of subliminal affirmations, I will typically write out the first 10. And when I've been in the studio, particularly when I was working on the creativity, Enhancing Creativity subliminal album, I did the first 10 and I got into such a attuned state that I just free-formed the next 20 affirmations. So by getting into that state, the affirmations just came to me. It was no work. I like it when things come to me. I don't like to work hard for a lot of this stuff.
Right, for sure. So a question here, the affirmations are subliminal, right?
Well, you record them. Good point. You record them audibly,
right,
at normal vocal speed. And then if you not have access to a recording studio or some kind of home setup, you just you speak at full volume, but you move your phone away from your mouth, And by trial and error, you'll find the right space to have the music playing and the volume of your voice so it's barely audible. And then you might move it even a little further away to be subliminal. Now, in the studio, we have microphones in different channels. So I record with my full voice, and then we just bring down the faders on the voice volume. So I have complete control. And I've done the same. I've done two versions of many of my albums, the audible version and the subliminal version. All I have to do with the engineer is we just bring down the fader on the volume of the voice. But if you whisper it to yourself, the subconscious says, this is a wimp. This is, they don't really believe what they're saying. So you don't want to whisper the subliminals. You want to speak in full voice.
Okay, that's great. Really useful information for people. So in addition to the wonderful work that you've been doing for several decades, almost 50 years now, are there any other suggestions or ideas that you have for things we need to do to create peace on earth, to create heaven on earth?
Well, one of the things is I was talking about early on, but there was no easy way to manifest this, would be to get millions of people meditating at the same time on radiating positivity and peace on earth. Now, the Maharishi and his organization, and I don't remember, I don't want to misquote his name, but the doctor and the physicist who was the public spokesperson for them for a long time, pointed out that when a certain percentage, maybe it was 1% of the population, meditated on peace, or in Washington, D.C. and other cities, crime went down. So right. We don't know what the precise amount is, but how do you get millions of people to meditate at the same time? When Live Aid started, and some of the first things, I had a friend who was working in the cruise, putting it together, and I said, you have all these rock groups, how about, having one act, even if it's only a 5-minute interlude, playing music that we could come into peace and radiate that together. And I said, nobody wants that. This is about performance and rock, and you're not famous, so we can't have you there. So, that was also part of what I was brought to the USSR US conference in 1987 that you were part of. There was supposed to be a big meditation at the final concert, which, of course, the opening session, the first day we were there, was tossed out the window. So I wasn't able to do that, which wound up being probably safer for me, given all the KGB that was, in the audience. But for years, there was no way to do it. I tried organizing things. The group Heart Math has been organizing monthly full moon coherence meditations that are coordinated. And they, and perhaps some others, are doing this now also. Through their outreach, people are tuning in. Now, a couple of times that I've tuned in, for me, the music they used was very off-putting. It did not work for me. It actually kept me out of the state that I want to be in. So I would then just turn off their soundtrack, put my own on, and link minds and link my biofield with all these other biofields. The big difference that has come up in the last number of years with the millions of people who are now tuning into music through the streaming platforms, not dealing with CDs, not dealing with MP3s, but with the broadcast, particularly through services like and platforms like Spotify and Pandora and maybe Apple Music. But I had this happen. How I got to understand this, I was in my chiropractor's office when one of my songs came on. It was CHAKRA SUITE, track 1. And I felt such a strong shift and alignment. I realized that I was going into a deeper state. Number one, of course, I'm familiar with the music, but I realized also, based on the work of Rupert Sheldrake with morphic resonance, when multiple minds are in training to the same balanced frequency, at the same frequency that I encode in the music, at the same time, this field is resonating and irradiated out to the planet. So it makes it easier for all of us to tune in. And that became the key to understanding that even when people don't recognize that that's what's happening, there is a non-local consciousness link happening with music like what I do and certain other musicians, that happen when people are listening to the same music at the same time. What I would really like to do is to work with some of these other organizations to get some better soundtracks to focus on at the same time. And that's still in negotiation. There are reasons why that's not happening quite yet, but the concept is possible now. And the reality is a reality now. And what that does, if you have been meditating, it deepens your own meditation instantly. Again, as a former type A person from New York, I'd like to get deep right away. But if you're not meditating, if you're just tuning in, you're still going to be shifted, your brainwave patterns and the energy flow in your body, which again, as a research-based phenomenon, I was trained and worked with Itzhak Bentov, who wrote the great book, Stalking the Wild Pendulum, who showed what happens inside the body when you get into a deeply relaxed state, how the energy and the blood going out of your heart pulses your brain at a certain periodic harmonic fashion that sets up an associated electromagnetic field around your head that interfaces and entrains with the dominant electromagnetic frequency of the earth itself, which is known as a Schumann resonance, which is about 8 cycles per second. So that happens automatically, whether you know it or not. You can enhance that by saying, okay, I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to tune into this. I'm going to be present for this experience. And that's the way. And then if you overlay your affirmations about discovering your purpose and linking up and just putting out that vibe, manifesting greater levels of peace and harmony on the planet, that's a positive state. You know, is that going to change your tornado? Well, maybe not, but there are other ways that we know that it has beneficial effects. And we have to start where we are and what we have control over. So that is the answer.
Well, so here's a thought for you. What about creating an album called Heaven on Earth?
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay, that sounds like a fun gig. And here's another thought, Stephen. When you were starting to talk about talking with the folks with heart math and so forth, what occurs to me is, I don't know, have you seen these programs where they have a group of musicians in one part of the world start to play a song, and then another group in another part of the world?
Yes.
Continuing the song, and then they go back and forth, and you pick up, so that you have musicians all over the world who are playing the same song. I wonder if we could support you in creating something like that using some of your music.
It's possible. That's a level of connection with all those other musicians that I don't have. Since pandemic, I don't have a studio to work out of. That I've had the same studio access for 25 years that ended with the pandemic, and then the studio moved up to Oregon, and I don't have a home studio set up yet where I can play the music, but I have existing music that I overdub on and can add for that. And the context, as I've learned, is what the title of an album is helps channel and helps focus the response to it. So,
how about making it Heaven on Earth? Let's do it Heaven on Earth.
That's what we're going to do. We can repurpose existing music and add to that for that. And how we could also do that is put some of that on a video posted to YouTube where it's free, because even though I don't spend a lot of time on YouTube and I don't listen to Spotify and Pandora when I'm working, I'm listening to my own music. But that's a place where people go. And one of the things I learned in business is the artist can't tell the audience, you must listen this way. And I tried that for many years. This is how you must listen to Chakra Suite. You have to listen to all 7 chakras. And people said, no, we just want to listen to one. And I got into fights with iTunes. I got into fights with YouTube. Oh, yeah. I said, but this is how the album, it works best. And they said, we don't care. We are now selling tracks.
You know what's so funny is I can hear the conversations with the part of you that's the New York type A personality, really knowing, because you've done the research, you've done the music and so forth, arguing in the type A personality mode, when all people really need to do is to actually slow down and tune into your music. I'll tell you, my husband's favorite track for doing his rolfing is CHAKRA SUITE. And I mean, we love CHAKRA SUITE. We play it when he works on me. So, we love your music. I don't know if you remember this. Years ago, you and I exchanged some of your music for a butterfly book.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the computer that I had all of your lovely music stored on got stolen. So we only have CHAKRA SUITE now. Maybe we can work out a deal here to get some of the music, to be able to download some of your music. And
if you have, right, definitely. If you have ability to get MP3s, we could get a lot of albums from my staff that does it. I can't do that for you, but this, I tell my staff person to do that, and we could get you.
Let's do that, and let's play together on getting Heaven on Earth out there as a global phenomenon, okay?
All right.
So I am so excited about this, and I have one other musician friend who's one of the people I interviewed in the first summit. He was one of the New Christy Minstrels, and he's a fabulous musician and singer, and he's got really quite wonderful music, and I'd love to put together a little chat with the two of you. His name is Michael Ellie. He's also quite an amazing human being like you. And I just get that would be a really fun connection as part of creating Heaven on Earth.
Absolutely. Let me mention one other thing.
Please.
One of the headlines that came to me years ago that I was also the first person to put out there is the concept. It's not, there's a difference between entertainment and entrainment.
Yeah.
When my album, Deep Alpha, was nominated for a Grammy in 2012, Billboard and the Grammys called me up and said, Mr. Halpern, you have a spelling error on the front of your album. And I said, what do you mean? I said, you misspelled entertainment. And I said, let me take you to school. Let me tell you, there is a difference. Entrainment is when an external sound or visual or something causes your internal reality to synchronize with the external. So in other words, when you listen to this music, your brain is entrained both to the vibe that I am in, where my brain is functioning at in the studio, but also I was one of the first people to work with Brainwave Entrainment and music. I featured this in 1991 when I was profiled and featured on the TV show that was famous back then called 48 Hours. They cut out all of the good stuff I was saying about it, but it blew away the producer and the on-screen host in the studio when I recorded this. And they said, wow, we could really feel the difference when you add the brainwave entrainment tones. You don't hear them. It's not a subliminal affirmation words is just a frequency that your brain can decode and locks your brain into the deep alpha mode. In other words, we can dial in precise frequencies of meditation. And as a person who wants to get to a place right away, this was great for me. So in my own meditations, I start off, I listen to 1 minute of that. My brain is in there, and I don't have to spend 15 or 20 minutes getting into a meditative state. I am there within seconds. And so that's what we'll build into the Heaven on Earth recording. And we can start, as the new reality is, YouTube is where a lot of people go to get free music. And then, of course, we get some great visuals. But when I posted track 13 from Deep Theta, which is the most ambient of the tracks on the album, there's no electric piano as a lead instrument. There's no even less melody than I usually work with. Melody, by the way, locks you into the present moment, into the present tense. We are projecting into the future where the music is going. That keeps you out of a mindful state of being in the present moment. So all of Western music, with all the books that talk about the importance of melody, we talk about that. I talk about this as the imperialistic effect of melody. It creates a plagiaristic effect on your nervous system. Great for certain things, great for entertainment, not for meditation and tuning into your own higher self, your own higher being. And in that state, you could also say, I become more aware and more sensitive to the subtle inflow of information from my higher self, from my guides, from my guardian angels, whatever word and concept is most appropriate and comfortable for you. I used all of them in the early days. When I first found out about tuning into one's muse in college from some of the major poets like Robert Duncan and Robert Creeley, who I got to hang out with, what a concept. Going back to ancient Greece and ancient Egypt, where the priests and the musicians would tune into their muse, that was how I did a lot of my training. I prayed, I set affirmations, and when that started happening, it was life-changing. And that's what I've continued. And that's what I'll be talking about in the book, because a lot of these spontaneous awakenings happened as a result of hearing a sound, getting into a certain place, being in nature, where suddenly I would hear a whole composition. And then all I had to do was go into the studio and play it. Or I'm in the studio and I would hear something in a second and know the entire 5 or 6 minute song. So that's been part of my process, which, I was ready to talk about when I got my Grammy nomination. Had I won, I was ready to get pulled off a stage, talking about my process. I didn't win, so I didn't get a chance to say it, but it'll be in the book. And
you got to sit here.
Right. So I've been putting the information out there. So it's really.
So have you completed your memoirs yet? No,
I'm getting close. And now I'm in the editing phase. Of course, new stories and vignettes and memories about, oh yeah, I remember what happened, at that time. There's always more stuff, but I'm now just trying to collate a lot of stuff. And some of it got lost when I first wrote it, when the computer crashed. So like you, I've had to redo a lot of stuff. But I'm really enjoying the process. And I am connecting the dots in a way that I never did before. I also get to see how ineffective some of the other consultants was in the ads and the headlines that I paid money for back in the early days, until I started studying with master marketers and really started to understand how to communicate what's going on. But entrainment, entertainment, this is a main thing. It's basically two different things. I listen to all kinds of music. I never tell people don't listen to this kind of music, but when you want to get into a healing mode, when you want to empower your own healing energies, you could do a much more effective job by tuning in, getting slow, getting quiet, tuning into the silence. The silence has been my teacher. The recording studio is the most silent place in this planet, other than, inside the Great Pyramid and deep within certain ancient caves. And that's one of the reasons why when I get into the studio, I used to pay money to just sit in the total silence. I'd say, engineer, take 15 minutes off. We're paying for it. Just leave me alone in here. And they said, this is amazing. This guy pays us to do nothing. But then when I started playing, I'm right in the zone. I didn't make mistakes. And they said, whatever he's doing, it works for him. So I was a legend in early years when they didn't know what meditation was at all, but they respected the fact another day, and he got, an album's worth of music, and all of it sounds great. That was 1975 when CHAKRA SUITE started, and then many of the others. Now, albums take years to get done because I keep getting more input, but that's, I don't want to repeat myself. So we keep adding new sounds and new aspects, new instruments, and putting the information out there to the world.
Well, Stephen, I want to thank you so much because this has been quite wonderful to reconnect with you after quite a number of years now. And so let's create an album called Heaven on Earth, and let's make it a global hit.
Absolutely.
A Grammy winner. Thank you, my friend, and much love to you. And thank you for everything you're doing, for all your great creations and your contributions to creating Heaven on Earth.
Well, thank you, Nori, and thank you, Don. I appreciate your help in making and manifesting this time together. And Don, I love your background. As you can see, I have a lot of tankas and mandalas around me also. And that's part of what keeps me vibrationally in the zone.
Much love to you. Take care.
Bye for now.
Namaste.
Namaste.